All right. So thank you all for joining us today. Here is our agenda. The topics we're going to be discussing today are some of the updates to the TPOT scoring and the scoring template. We're going to, I'm just going to run through quickly what the data submission procedure is for your TPOTs. This is your opportunity to ask me any questions or make any comments about the TPOT administration, any of the scoring or the submission. We'll talk a little bit about using the TPOT for coaching. I know that you are all data coordinators, and I believe, as I'm looking at the list, very few of you, if any, are doing direct coaching of teachers. Essentially, I'm just going to show you some web-based resources that have more information around coaching. We'll talk about the ASQ data guidance that we're offering to teams, and we're going to talk a little bit about the adjustment of some of the questions on the ASQ data for the spring sample only, based on feedback that we got from some of the sites at our TPOT Academy. Okay. All right. So Sandy, I see that you've joined us as well. You'll need to enter your PIN number to access the to be able to talk. And so once you've done that, I should be able to allow you to talk, to raise your questions. Otherwise, we'll go with the chat box for now as well. Okay. So there's been some changes in the TPOT, and those changes have come about because the authors of the TPOT are currently working to have the TPOT published. The published version is expected to be out soon, and it's unclear how training on the use of this new TPOT is going to be provided to programs that purchase the tool. In Wisconsin, we are currently planning to continue to use the research edition of the TPOT. And the research edition of the TPOT is the TPOT that you all have been using, that you all have been trained on. We've made a few Wisconsin edits in collaboration with the authors of the tool. I think the big takeaway message is that these changes have very little impact on the new and program-wide implementers. Essentially, your observation process has not changed significantly. The only thing that's changed is the spreadsheet and how the spreadsheet calculates the scores. Okay. So essentially what's changed is how we are reporting and measuring fidelity of implementation, and we've had a slight adjustment in item number 14 that we're going to talk about. Internal coaches who, from new programs, so those programs who were just trained in August of 2013, have been trained in the quote-unquote new TPOT, or kind of hybrid Wisconsin version of the TPOT. And for those of you who have been implementing and using the old TPOT, we've taken all of your old data and transferred it to the new TPOT. And I emailed most of you a web link about that today, and some of you also got that this summer. Okay? Questions at all about why there's changes and those changes? Okay. Then I will move on. I'm still trying to get Jamie and Sandy unmuted, and I've sent you your link for that again. So really the big changes are, for those of you who are familiar with the old TPOT, we've essentially eliminated the 0 to 5 scoring criteria, and that was based on the author's research that demonstrated using a percentage of indicators in place was much more beneficial to teachers. And I think what we've also experienced is that it gives a much better sense of how much work the teachers really are doing and implementing. It gives a better picture of the amount of practices that are in place. Okay, so there are there are things that are the same. The number of environmental items is still reported out, and the number of red flags is still reported out. Essentially, all the items are the same with the exception of item 14, and we'll talk about that. And we've changed to scoring the percentage of indicators for each item that are in place. And then the program also calculates the percentage of indicators that are in place overall. So I'm going to show you an example, I hope, of a TPOT. So this was an old TPOT. So those of you who have had TPOTs that were administered prior to this year, this is what we did. So this is what you'll see. There's the old TPOT. We've kept the number scores on there mostly because it was extremely challenging to eliminate those numbers. We're just no longer going to kind of look at those numbers anymore. And what you'll see is that this piece has been added. So what the program does is it calculates the number of yeses versus how many possible yeses and calculates out the percentage of those indicators that are in place. Items that have the option of scoring NO, like this one, the program gives a ½ point for items that are indicated as NO. So the teacher doesn't get full credit for using those practices, but they're not penalized as well if there is not an opportunity to use that skill. For those of you who have done TPOTs, old TPOTs, you'll see that item number 14 is left blank. And we're going to talk about why that is. Eventually, we will resolve that blankness of item 14 on the old TPOTs. But when we walk through the changes, I think you'll see why. And I have more information about that. Any questions at all or comments about the new scoring criteria? Can someone just say something so that I know that the audio is still working?
No questions.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for being responsive. I think in what we're hearing from most folks is that that makes sense. It makes sense. And you can kind of see in some cases a teacher may have scored a 0, but she really has about 68% of the indicators in place. So it is, I think it will give your programs a better sense of the practices that a teacher are actually using. And Sandy, I see that you're asking a question. I'm trying to find your question. I don't know how to get to your question. So Sandy, if you've chatted me a question, I'm not seeing that, but I see that you've asked a question, and I apologize. Or that I'm looking to see where we're at. Okay. Oh, wait. Okay, so Sandy, you can't get the audio to work. I apologize about that. People are trying they're trying number hashtag to get in. Otherwise, you could, if you have a chat feature, you could chat me your question. Okay? So here's the changes to item 14, and I know that you are data coordinators. I understand that. I understand that many of you are not directly coaching teachers, but I think it's helpful for you to understand how the data is changing as you work with the team to interpret the data. So here's the old item 14, and we're just going to kind of walk through the changes. So based on the elimination of the 0 to 5 scores, those have disappeared. The question is still the same. Was challenging behavior observed, yes or no? And if challenging behavior was not observed, then none of item 14 are scored. Okay, so we had a lot of confusion about that in the old TPOT. So currently, if there's no challenging behavior observed, you move on. You score none of the indicators on item 14. If there was challenging behavior observed during the TPOT observation, then all of the current items are scored. Okay, and here are the current items. So essentially, 4 of the items were eliminated because the authors felt that they were measured in other areas, or the language and scoring procedure was confusing in their piloting of the research edition. Are there questions at all about item 14?
No.
Thank you. So here's what the new TPOT looks like. And so you'll see on the TPOT, in case you field questions about this, if you see, and I hope that you can see my mouse, but you'll see that the numbers in what used to be the 5 column start with 5.2 and 5.3, and we did that on purpose because what we anticipate doing, we are currently working with programmers to develop a web-based reporting system for the TPOT scores. And what we will do at that time is take all the TPOT data and we'll enter that into the new web-based tool, and we'll make the translation at that time for those teachers who were scored using the old TPOT. So what you'll see in the old TPOT, I'm actually going to, in the new TPOT, I'm going to show you a new TPOT scoring. I'll show you a new TPOT scoring. Sorry about that. A little later, and we've already talked about this. Item 14, if you get them back from us, it'll be blank on item 14. And what we did is we recalculated the percentage of total indicators. So essentially your teachers aren't penalized for having item 14 blank. We've taken care of that. And when we go to switch to the new version, the program will take care of that. Is that as clear as mud?
Yeah. It makes sense.
Okay. Okay. So we're working our way through this. And so just a reminder, as if you're looking at the data and you're looking at the TPOTs that come in, if your coaches haven't sort of answered those yes or no, did challenging behavior happen, then you're going to need that information to enter it into the new TPOT. You have to, if you say no, there was no challenging behavior, the program will automatically give the teachers the point, or it'll automatically enter them yes. Okay. And for items 16 through 18, just a reminder that your coaches will be indicating, did I score this based on observation, based on report, or based on both? At this point, we're asking you to enter that data into the spreadsheet, and we're working to figure out if there is relevance to that data right now. We still want you to collect it, but we're kind of chewing on that. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So based on the new way of scoring, you will see this at the bottom of each teacher's page, and I'm going to take you to that and show you where you can get the new TPOT scoring. But this will be available for every TPOT that you give. It'll say how many of the indicators are in place, how many possible, and then it'll give what percentage of items, of the indicators for each item a teacher has in place. And then this bottom line here will calculate the total number, the total percentage of indicators in place, and it will tell you whether or not there's any red flags. Right now, we are calculating fidelity of implementation, so that is the reasonable degree of use of the pyramid model practices that can correlate with positive child and program outcomes as 80% of total indicators in place with no red flags. So when we look at this teacher's TPOT scores, this would be a teacher who's not yet at fidelity, but has some very solid practices in place. Okay. We are working through the state leadership team to issue an annual certificate to teachers who have demonstrated fidelity through an observation with someone who is TPOT reliable. We're in the initial stages of planning that, and we anticipate that when the web-based data tool is developed, that will make things far easier to issue the certificates. Because we know the certificates are just that, it's a certificate that a teacher could either upload as part of a professional development plan process, as part of an educator effectiveness portfolio item, as part of licensing, and we are also working with the registry right now to have coaches enter the coaching time, particularly for child care teachers, so that they receive registry credit for the amount of time that they spend working with the coach. Because we know that maintaining fidelity is vital, so if you show fidelity in one TPOT, it means that you've shown fidelity in one TPOT. We are recommending that each teacher who reaches fidelity has a TPOT completed at least once a year. So once a teacher has reached fidelity, the observation schedule could be adapted to an annual TPOT. Some of our programs are opting to go with criteria that a teacher needs 2 TPOTs in a row that show fidelity, so 2 TPOTs 6 months apart that show fidelity before they switch to an annual process. And that's why the certificate will be an annual certificate. Are there questions or comments about fidelity, the certificate, or the annual TPOT?
Michelle, I have a question about, I was at Fidelity last year, and I am now an internal coach, and I am doing the TPOTs on other people and coaching them. Do I need to continue getting coached myself?
So you're at Fidelity,
yes,
and as you move into coaching other teachers in a peer-to-peer model, our assumption is that you are also participating in the coaching process, right? As you confer with the folks that you're using the TPOT to coach with, you're also reflecting on your own practices. We are asking, though, that somebody this year, in this year, completes a TPOT observation on you and provides you with feedback and reflection.
Okay.
So that you are able to maintain your fidelity.
Okay, but I don't have to continue getting coached myself.
If you feel that's not necessary, if your coach feels it's no longer necessary, that makes sense.
Yes, it does make plenty of sense. It's pretty much up to us where we together feel we're at. So, thank you.
Okay, sure. I mean, I don't want to undermine the importance of coaching. I think that even really exceptional teachers benefit from reflecting together with a coach about practices. I mean, I think we all have room for improvement. So I want to be clear about that.
Yeah, it wouldn't hurt to check in, but not necessarily the monthly and more intensive type of coaching where we would be doing with somebody not at Fidelity yet, possibly.
Right, and as our programs, remember we've been doing this for only 3.5 years now, and as programs are having more teachers who are at Fidelity, they are looking at how those teachers can be linked together, say in a professional learning community model where they're really looking at the child level data and really talking about which practices are really showing benefit, which practices they want to focus on learning more about, or which practices they want to really systematically review together. Some teachers are also forming into a community of practice where they're maintaining some peer coaching with each other, or at minimal sort of finding time to observe each other, teaching around specific content or using specific strategies that they feel that they would like to enhance in their own practice.
Great, thank you very much.
So, you know, for those of you who have been doing this a while, which TPOT should you use for the new site? Go ahead and use what we're calling kind of the 2013 TPOT, just the way you were trained. You have the spreadsheets for that. You have the TPOT items for that. For those of you who have been using the old TPOT, and I keep making air quotes that no one can see, but I'm kind of using the old TPOT, the pre-2013 TPOT. We strongly recommend that you switch to using the percentage of items in place. And we've taken all your old TPOT data and plugged it into the new spreadsheet that will do that for you.
And where is that new spreadsheet?
So the new, I'm going to show you where to download the new spreadsheet, and then I can also email that directly to those of you who are on the call today. But I'll show you where to get that. If you have teachers who have had TPOTs completed, I would recommend that you continue to use the spreadsheet that we sent you so that you'll get a cumulative graph for that teacher. But for new teachers that you're bringing on in this new year, if you're using a cohort model, then then just use the new 2013 TPOT spreadsheet. Was that the gist of your question?
I just wondered where it was.
Okay. Okay, I'll show you that. And as far as item 14, for those of you who have been using sort of the old item 14, you can, you make the decision. Do you want to switch to using the new item 14? Do you want to just keep scoring them all and kind of wait until the data system is up together, and then we'll all make that switch together? Questions at all about that?
No.
So here's where you get the new TPOT. So we have a web sharing site on Collaborating Partners webpage. We have a secure login for program-wide sites. And here's the username and the password. And this is the folder where it is. So I'm going to just show you that right now. So here's the website. If you go to secure login and you go to program, I'm sorry, did you see that? Program-wide site login. Okay. And the username is pyramid model, capital P, capital M, no spaces. And the username is 10 program wide. Capital P, no hyphen, no space between program wide. And log in. And you go under item 9. You'll see there are two TPOT folders. There's a TPOT folder that says it's the 2013 Wisconsin revision, and then we're still keeping up the TPOT that was used prior to 2013 if you want that. But if you go into the 2013 folder, you'll see here's the spreadsheet to enter the scores. Here's the TPOT that your coaches can use. I'm sorry, I lied. This is the TPOT averages across teachers. Sorry. Here is the TPOT itself. Here is the scoring template for entering a teacher's scores. This is the new scoring template. And here is the manual for your coaches. Okay? We're going to talk about the TPOT averages across teachers in January. If you're interested in learning more about that, there are video clips that kind of walk you through that process on this link. So questions about where to find the new TPOT information?
No, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Just a reminder about the tabs on the bottom. So here's the new TPOT item. Here's the new TPOT, okay? And I really tried to look at it so that when you enter the date here and you enter the program name and you enter the teacher name, if you just click over that and highlight that, it will populate all of that information into the graph. I think it'll make the graphs more functional for us, so we'll give that a whirl. Just a reminder about the tabs at the bottom. There is occasionally confusion about that. So this is a teacher who's had two TPOTs already entered. So I would click on the third tab and enter the TPOT data. This is, I want to clarify that we did the very best we could. And converting the data was a continual work in progress that happened over the summer. So what you should be able to do is enter just a Y or an N. Okay, so I'm going to show you to just, oops, sorry. So you should be able just to enter pretty quickly, just Ys. Some of you, if you go to enter a Y and it dings, if you get an error message, then you'll have to type in a yes or use the pull-down menu, okay? So that's part of just the conversion of taking the old data and adjusting it. So in some of you got a spreadsheet with old data, you may have to enter yeses and nos, okay? I want to clarify for item 14, if you say that there is no challenging behavior, so I'm entering no, then you're done. The program will score it as 100%. Okay? For coaches, they can use file print, and it will print just the teacher's summary of scores, if that's helpful for them in their coaching. For you as a data coordinator, particularly when we talk about if you're going to create a TPOT averages across teachers, this percentage tab at the bottom puts together all of a teacher's scores across time, and they should be conditionally formatted, so if there's red flags, they show up, your attention's drawn to that, versus if there are no red flags. Okay? And then the percentage graph looks a little bit different. So again, the teacher's name will populate into the graph, smaller, and the date, if you enter the date, it'll show up in the legend. And it will calculate out the percentage of indicators that a teacher has in place. as a reminder, you can click on the last bar in the graph, and if you right-click and select Add Data Labels, it will tell you what percentage is. The number of classroom environment items still graph as a number, total number, and the red flags also graph as a total number. And then the program will calculate how much coaching time between the first TPOT and every subsequent TPOT. So you have a sense of how much time passed between each bar on this graph. Because there are some teachers who, because of maternity leave or had more coaching time, kind of had more time passed between TPOT 1 and the remaining TPOTs. So questions about what to find and where to find it? And this should, you should be able to just file print, and this one's not working. So you should be able to file print. If you have problems printing the whole sheet, the whole sheet, if you've unclicked on any of the graph, the whole data sheet should print for you. Okay? All right. So that's TPOT. Again, the TPOT is a coaching tool. These are several models of coaching, and the observation piece of the TPOT is just one piece of coaching, and so it really is designed to be used to provide very descriptive feedback to a teacher about his or her strengths with specific examples, their emerging practices with specific examples, and to really be used to engage in conversation with a teacher about what it is he or she would like to target through coaching. All right? I think we talked about this. And so here are coaching resources that are available to you. I will also share this link with your internal coaches and your external coaches. Head Start has some really lovely resources around practice-based coaching. And the Taxi Coaches page as well has some really nice resources for coaching. So your TPOT data is technically due October 15th. We understand that with some changes in state requirements, many of your 4K teachers it may be more challenging to schedule observation times in your 4K classrooms. We understand that. And so if you need flexibility in the due date for your TPOT data, just drop Lana or I an email at the address you see on the screen. So just remember, if you're adding new observations for the same teachers, to use the tabs. It would be really helpful if you save the TPOT with whatever code you're using for the teacher. Many of you are using teachers' initials or some sort of code to save it that way. And then just email the TPOT spreadsheets as attachments in an email to wisconsinpyramidmodel@gmail.com. So questions about the TPOT data submission?
Nothing.
No.
Okay. All right. Then let's talk a little bit about the ASQSE. And I just want to start with just a little bit of the philosophy of the ASQSE in its use in program-wide adopters of the pyramid model. Really, the ASQSE is a program-level measurement tool. It's a snapshot for your program leadership team to evaluate, does your program have tiered levels of intervention that reduce or eliminate social emotional risk for the children it serves? Whoops. And so we're screening not just to find young children with developmental delays, but we're screening as part to engage in the conversation about where specific kids may be globally in a big picture way that will help the adults who support that child have a greater understanding about typical child development. The words and quotes on the screen come from the Wisconsin Governor's Council on Early Childhood. Their Healthy Children's Committee is really working on developing a comprehensive screening and assessment system in Wisconsin. But more broadly, in a pyramid model site, your screening data is one data source to help you make decisions about how to provide tiered levels of intervention and for which children. Wisconsin selected the was there a question? Wisconsin selected the ASQSE because it's a reliable and valid tool, and it is used widely across multiple disciplines in Wisconsin. And it's useful for determining which kids may need targeted or individualized interventions. Are any of you on the line using another screening tool that includes a significant social and emotional component?
No.
No.
This is a thing called goals assessment with the creative curriculum.
Right. Okay. And so we'll talk about the Teaching Strategies goals as an ongoing assessment tool, but really the ASQSE we're viewing in a response to intervention model as your universal screener for social and emotional development. So as such, we're recommending that all children in your program should be screened. We're asking a clarifying question to see how many of those children are enrolled in a classroom that is receiving coaching. The guidance is that you would not screen until after 6 weeks of enrollment, and you may opt to use any combination of the screening adults. So you could have the parents screen the children in the fall on the ASQSE. The ASQSE is a parent screening tool. You may opt, for the purposes of this pyramid model universal screening, to have teachers only complete the ASQSE data, or you could do a combination of both. Either have parents and teachers score separately, you could have parents and teachers score together as part of a parent-teacher conference. And so we have programs that are doing different arrangements of who is actually addressing the screening questions. What we do suggest is that if you go with one way of screening in the fall, you use the same method for screening in the spring. Questions or comments about that?
No.
As data coordinators, this is just information. Many of you are probably familiar with the ASQSE, but here are the 7 behavioral areas that the ASQSE measures, and we feel very confident that pyramid model practices that are implemented with fidelity address these areas of development. But in case you have questions about that, or you're fielding questions as part of your review of the ASQSE data and your leadership team, this could be information for you to share with your team. So as far as administering the ASQSE, you're going to ensure that you have the appropriate parent permissions in place for your system. Some of our programs are writing in the use of the ASQSE and or the ASQ3 as part of universal practices, and they're including that in the family handbooks. Your teachers will need the correct protocol according to the age of the child, and there is a document that we've shared with you that just says here are the age ranges, and then it tells which protocol you need. And I'm going to show you where to get that as well before we're through today. So sort of getting the right number of protocols according to the age of the children in the classroom. Then after the protocols have been scored, after the protocols have been entered, after the adults have addressed the questions, your leadership team needs to determine who scores the protocols. It can be your teachers, it could be you as data coordinators, it could be the leadership team members. The manual says that a paraprofessional is able to score as well. So just getting them physically scored, you'll have to think about that. And then you may want to, as a leadership team, consider a window of time. So, you know, we're going to get all of our ASQSE ratings completed in this 2-week window, so that when you look to kind of compare scores, you're kind of comparing apples to apples. And then, we'll show you the questions that we ask, but we will ask you when you submit your data to quantify the number of children who scored close to cutoff. And we're letting programs define that. Some programs have criteria already determined for that they've been asked to use as part of a broader system they belong to. So we're letting programs decide to make their own decision rules about what does close to cutoff mean. Where we've landed is that 1 or 2 answers away from the cutoff score may be good guidance for your decision rule about that. So if an adult answered one question differently and the kid would have scored above cutoff, those might be kids that you can look at a little bit more closely and think about some targeted supports for them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So for the ASQ data submission, you need the total number of children who are screened. And this was a very recently added, the next category is a very recently added question, the number of those children who are in classrooms being coached in the pyramid model. And then we ask you to give us the total number of kids who scored above cutoff. Those are kids who, quote unquote, flagged on the screener or whose screening results indicate that there may be developmental concerns. Those kids who scored close to cutoff, those are kids who you may want to monitor more closely or to involve in some targeted interventions. And those kids who are below cutoff, those kids who are showing that universal program practices are meeting their needs. So here's the ASQ data submission form. And so you just enter in, if you enter in your name here, it'll populate across the graph. And then you can enter the date. So you could put fall of 2013. And then let's just say you screened 100 kids. You just enter in the number of kids who scored in each area. Whoops. And you'll see this number at the bottom just keeps track of how many kids you have left to account for in the system. So, and then let's just say that half of the kids were enrolled. Okay, this number right here, the number of children who are in the classroom receiving pyramid model coaching currently does not calculate. We're just asking for this information right now, and we'll be looking at how we can do some data analysis on that in ways that allow us to use trial level data without disclosing individual children.
Has it always been, I just have a quick question. Has it always been there? This is Missy.
Yeah, Missy. No, you're right. This is brand new. Brand new.
Okay.
Brand, and so, like very brand new.
Yeah, because in the past we've just been doing, for the total number of children who were screened in the fall, we were just doing our pyramid model classes that we've been implementing in.
You bet.
So what you're asking for, though, is for me to do total number of children who are screened, because we screen all of our children in our entire program. You want me to do all of the children from both programs for next door?
That's where we're landing, Missy, and so you raise a great question. I knew that you would help me think this through.
Sorry.
So, no, great question. So right, program-wide adoption of the pyramid model is more than just the teachers using the practices. It's about really how does the policy and procedures of the program support young children. And so honestly, this question is here. The number of kids who are in a classroom receiving pyramid model coaching is on there because we don't have a sense of who you are reporting to us.
Okay.
And so, okay, so if you can give us all the data, we are hoping to be able to show that at some point, and I think we're a way off of this, that at some point, children who are in classrooms with teachers who are at fidelity have better outcomes than children who are in classrooms with teachers who have not yet received coaching.
Right.
The data that we're asking for right now can't tell us that, but it's information that I believe will be useful for our state leadership team as we explore how we can collect this information from you. Fair?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So if you've already sent me data as well, then and you've already done the screening or as part of just your enrollment process, then if there are 100 kids here, or if there are 100 kids, you reported 100 kids, and 100 of those kids are in classrooms, but you really screened 300 kids, it's okay. We're going to step into this. Okay? All right.
Julie, you've got close to cutoff on this is defined as 5 to 10 points. Before you said 1 to 2, that's quite a difference. What do you want it to be?
Okay.
You said 1 to 2 questions. Sorry.
1 to 2 questions. Yeah, 1 to 2 questions. And so the least score you can get is 5 points. Okay.
Sorry, I
Okay.
misinterpreted.
No, and I was trying to figure out how to make the slides make sense for that. So, okay, great questions, you guys. Then, what we are asking, and this is a shift. So this is from some feedback that we got from sites that came back for a refresher training this summer. Our guidance for the spring use of the ASQSE is to continue to rescreen all children who are enrolled in the program. Because we know that young children can often be one life event from experiencing a challenge in social emotional development. So we're continuing to recommend a universal screen every 6 months in your programs. We understand that many of you have other obligations or other screening requirements in the spring, and we understand that many of you are using ongoing assessment following the universal screening in the fall. So minimally, what we're asking is that those children with fall scores that were either above cutoff or close to cutoff are rescreened in the spring. And we're going to ask you these questions. So I can undo that. We're going to ask you these questions in the spring then. So when you click on the spring tab, so if you haven't screened kids in the fall, then you leave that blank. But the program will populate. So there were 10 kids who scored above cutoff in the fall, and of those 10 kids, when you rescreened, where did their scores fall? And of the 15 kids who were close to cutoff, where did those kids fall in their rescreens? Okay, so our guidance for this program will be you still screen all 100 kids, but minimally you at least screen the 25 children who flagged or who were close to flagging. Because we believe that will give you good information about your program's capacity to provide targeted and individualized supports.
Is that what that's asking, though? Man, I'm confused.
Okay.
I would think that first one would say children who scored below cutoff and still children who scored close to. If you want to skip anybody, wouldn't you skip the kids who scored above?
So
they were
Linda,
okay.
So Linda, in the ASQSE,
Yeah.
kids who score over cutoff, the higher the score, the more challenges that are present.
Oh. Okay.
Okay.
I'm familiar with the device, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
It seems opposite, doesn't it?
It does. It
score
is.
well, we want to no. So if you score high, then you're at higher risk.
Yeah, exactly. And it is even more confusing because on the ASQ3, it's the opposite. So kids who score high, there are no concerns. Kids who score lower, aren't. So that's why it's that way. And then what the program will do is it will graph for you how kids are scoring. Okay, so you have a sense of that. Okay, we'll address that in the spring a little bit more on our call. Okay.
Can I just ask a question too about that, Julie? In spring, when those children are rescreened, it needs to be rescreened by that same person that screened them in fall?
We're
consistent?
Yeah, because we're looking at consistency of the score. So if you had parents do the screening in the fall, then parents would do the screening in the spring. For as much as, if that's possible, It is also a valid and reliable tool across people. I mean, it has good inter-rater reliability. So to the greatest extent possible, that's our advice. Okay? Thank you. All right. And for those of you who are using a common ongoing assessment with social emotional items, so somebody mentioned teaching strategies goals, then you can just submit digital summaries of the group for each of your benchmarking periods. And we pretty much know who those folks are, and we've been working with you on that. Our advice, our guidance is to continue to do the universal spring in the fall. Universal screen in the fall, and then use your common ongoing assessment to do monitoring of your interventions for kids. All right, and then, so your ASQSE data is due November 15th. This is the direct link, and I've sent all of you who registered, or all of you that I knew was registered this morning, this PowerPoint, so you'll just be able to go to this folder and download the link. It's also in the program-wide sharing secure login that we talked about accessing to get the TPOT. It's also there under an ASQSE folder. So you'll just save your spreadsheet with your program name on it and email it to wisconsinpyramidmodel@gmail.com. All right. We are at our time.
The link you sent this morning didn't work.
The link I sent this morning didn't work?
Correct.
Okay. Is this Linda?
Yep.
Okay. To get your data?
The email that you sent this morning, the link that was in it, it says the web page is not available.
Okay. I will resend your. And research, you use Google Docs, right?
Yep.
Okay. That might be a way we can explore sharing data as well. So our next call is November 13th. Again, these are optional calls, not required at all. We're going to focus on any questions about your ASQSE data, and we're going to review the BIR data and how you train your staff to use the BIR. Okay. We've added a webinar on November 4th, the TPOT, which is a teaching pyramid for infants and toddlers observation scale. That it's the TPOT equivalent for birth to 3 classrooms that serve children ages 3, has been revised, and we'll be walking through that on Monday, November 4th. That is fresh information, brand new. We're just beginning to look at it, and we'll hopefully have a sense of how you would report that data by November 4th. Okay? All right. Any questions?
Have they done anything to correct the program-wide PBS benchmarks equality spreadsheet that doesn't work?
That is one of the things that I sent to you this morning.
Okay.
And there is really only one site that's struggling with that, and so I don't know if it's a quirky spreadsheet that you got, but that's a great question. We are in the process of beginning to enter data into the Benchmarks of Quality web-based reporting system, and we're hopefully going to get everyone's data in that, and that will eliminate needing to use spreadsheets to do your benchmarks of quality. You'll be able to do that online and pull your own data and do some data digging online. So we are probably a couple months away from that. We're working out glitches with the programmers, but we hope to have that up and ready to go soon. So, if there are any other questions?
Nope.
No. All right. Thank you all for your time and for your dedication for doing this really big thing that we know can make such a difference in the lives of children and their families.
Thank you.
Your best wishes. Thank you.